Hello, welcome to Lunar Living.
We are two sisters sharing our journey of life and motherhood. Join us as we explore our spiritual roots, tuning in with our bodies and the pulse of nature's intelligence.
Let's get real with it as we laugh, cry, and grow through this life together. We are your co-hosts, Sarai
and Jordan Ariel.
Hello, Lunar Loves. Today is the 23rd of Tevet, year 5784. We are 6 days away from our new lunar cycle and the new month of Shavat.
Yeah, so Shavat is actually my favorite month of the entire Jewish calendar because it includes the holiday of Tu B'Shvat, which is the new year or the birthday of the trees. And I love trees. They're my spirit animal.
You don't say.
But anyway, it's a little interesting tidbit about Shavat, like why would we have a holiday for the trees in winter, right? But this time in late winter or around late winter in the land of Israel is when actually the sap in the trees starts to rise. And so it's I take that also as like a time to where our own sap is rising, like creatively. So you don't necessarily see the leaves and flowers sprouting on the outside, but inside this work is happening and it's starting to warm up. And it's just, I don't know. I love the things that are unseen. So that's one reason why I love Shavat. And
That is beautiful.
Yeah. And that's why I'm so excited. Tu B'Shvat's coming up, and we're going to share a lot with you about Tu B'Shvat on the next episode. But this episode is a very special one because we have an amazing special guest today. She is a writer, a director, a teacher, a philosopher of sorts, and my best friend from since we were 7 years old. Her name is Giovanna Cassese. Give her a hand. Welcome, welcome. Here all the way from Rome, Italy.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Gia.
Hi, friends. How is everyone doing today?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Yeah, we're good. Happy to see you and to share this little chat.
I'm happy to be on this podcast with you guys. I'm excited. And, I always find myself having such amazing conversations with the both of you. And I just know that that's why this is going to be a good conversation. So
Totally.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Let's do
Best
this.
first guest ever.
For real.
So I do want to ask you as a fellow, an amateur writer, but a fellow writer, what got you into your love for writing?
Well, I want to answer that I don't think that amateur writers exist because every human being in the world is a born writer and a born storyteller. And the way that we see the world is directly connected to storytelling and our own narratives. But when it comes to how I started, I just had to, because that's how I understood the world as a little girl, like playing pretend, Harry Potter fan club, it was just a way of me understanding the realities around me and the relationships I had with people. And so that's where I feel like any storyteller like you, Sarai, or like JoJo, I know is a storyteller, comes from,
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say, like, I remember just you're one of the only people who I know who just from the very beginning, like you just were what you were. You knew what you wanted to do. Like you were like, I want to be a writer. You're 7 years old and you're writing in your journal and like writing stories and stuff. And it was so amazing, like engaging to me. And we had so much fun writing stories together. So it's just watching you blossom into like an actual professional in your field, doing your thing has been like amazing. And I know you have even more amazing and beautiful things that you want to do and that you are going to do, but like you're freaking doing it. And I am impressed and very proud of you. So
yeah, same here.
That's so nice, Jojo. Thank you. And I feel the same way in so many aspects of both of your lives.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you are like an inspiring big sis to me.
Yeah.
Always, like, even when you guys were just talking about that, and I loved what you said about everyone's like a natural storyteller. That resonated so much. But I remember being like a little kid, like 2 or 3, and you and Jordan playing a game like called The House is Falling Down. And you two were both like just such imaginative beings, like that you like kind of created this world for me and like really ushered me in. So you had mentioned narrative earlier, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, but what is a personal narrative? Because I know narrative, like people be like, oh, the narrative or whatever, but what is a personal narrative?
That is such a good question, Sarai, because so narrative is about storytelling, right? And you can have a narrative in books, in movies, in TV shows, but you can also have a narrative you're telling yourself about your own life.
Like main character energy.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be for the better and sometimes it can be for the worse. And a lot of the times we don't even realize that we're telling ourselves narratives, personal narratives. Once we realize that we are doing that as a way to understand our reality and the situations that surround us, the more we can know how to, I don't want to say manipulate, but consciously write our own stories or our own personal narratives and maybe give us a better life.
Right.
I want to hope. It's a theory.
Like you can choose like an empowering narrative or one where like you're the victim and you're like being fucked over all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
exactly it.
Well, yeah, and there's also the concept of like we create stories in our heads, right? We create narratives in our heads, like based off of like somebody looks at you a certain way. And I mean, I will create a whole story. Somebody will look at me a certain way and I will create an entire story about what's going on in their life and what they were like.
Oh, this person hates me because blah, blah, blah. Or,
Right.
Or even like, oh, they're probably going through a breakup. Their eyes looked swollen. They must be angry at the world and taking that out on me. You know?
Well, that's even like more graceful than
this
some
bitch,
people would make it.
isn't
Yeah,
getting laid. She has a stick up her ass.
Yeah, I
You
guess
know?
like what, yeah, I'll be like thinking like, oh, maybe they had like an abusive like parent or something. Like
Okay,
that's
well,
the
that's
bad
sad.
one. I know. I'm like, it's not always like, I'm like, oh, maybe it's heartbreak.
But
like,
that's us telling personal narratives about people we may not know or even friends and people who are close to us.
Right.
And we also have to try to refrain from doing that because who are we to tell the narratives of other people? We never know what's going on with that, like guy you bumped into Trader Joe's who said, fuck you. We're never going to know what's going on there. And, maybe sitting down to imagine what's going on with his life could be either a waste of time or something good that helps you understand another human better. It depends on you.
yeah.
Yeah. I always feel like if I am creating stories about other people, like, who I interact with in life, I try to create stories that like are at least benefiting me instead of like making me feel more like shit about myself. Like,
So
if I it is better to refrain from creating stories about other people and what they're thinking and whatever. But sometimes like, I'll just be like, oh man, like maybe he's having a bad day and it doesn't have anything to do with me, instead of being like, wow, he didn't like my nose. And so he treated me like that because I'm wearing a purple shirt.
He talks to me like I'm stupid because I'm a woman. That's been a thought that I've had. And it's like, is this dude a misogynist asshole? Or, you know, is that how I'm perceiving it?
Right. Or even like, I mean, if like to get real with it too, like I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm wearing my Star of David. Maybe he doesn't like me because I'm Jewish or something. Like, and I know that like, and there are people like, or whatever, maybe they don't like me because, but
that's like an embodied, unhealed part of yourself that you're projecting onto someone else.
Yeah.
So is that kind of like, that is the personal narrative, is that you're kind of like creating all of these stories about everything that's happening, and you could create it in a way that's like honestly not helpful to the collective of Jewish people and not helpful to yourself and not helpful to all. I mean,
if you guys want to talk about Jewish people, what I can say is that there are two narratives from what I see as an outsider as an atheist / Catholic. What I see is a narrative that is Jewish people, Hebrew people as survivors, and, you know, like not warriors, but survivors, like
barely
throughout history. You know, it's not that they're trying to, you know, fight anybody or take any land really in the Bible and stuff. No, they're just existing and they're constantly being pushed out. But they continue to survive and they continue to find a place. So these are world.
Collective narratives, right?
Yeah, these we're talking about other stuff now.
Yeah,
narratives, that's you know, that's why I wanted to start with saying that storytelling is an innate humankind condition, and a lot of things focus around stories.
So what's the second one though?
The victim narrative.
Yeah.
The Holocaust narrative, which also exists and is okay to have, because we have to understand that it's something that fucking happened that was an atrocity.
Well, and also growing up Jewish, it's like we celebrate Passover every year, which is this like holiday of freedom, but also it's like we were enslaved, you know, so there is this constant thread. And the both that you described from an outside perspective, they seem to me kind of like similar. There is another narrative that like I'm trying to like really tap into and amplify, like just like being like a spiritual Jewish person who like I'm Jewish and also like agnostic, and also, you know, it's like I don't prescribe to all of the books and everything. I'm just really spiritual, and I feel like I chose this life and chose Judaism. So there's a lot to offer from that for me. But there also is a narrative of being a light amongst the nations. And I feel like a lot of this might even...
Which is a light, not the light, okay?
Exactly.
Being a light,
That's a really
right?
important distinction.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Well, and that's the thing. Like anybody who I've ever heard say that says like that we are meant to be a light amongst the nations. Nobody. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and also I've seen in my journey too is like that, like my mom converted. And so like, it's not so cut and dry how like even accepted in the Jewish community I have been in some situations, you know, and I've been able to see that like this light, this godliness is within like each and every soul, this light, this spark. So it's like, I just personally feel like the narrative that I am buying into is one that like I am a light and I'm meant to shine my light to illuminate, you know, the world, not like just to help humanity, like be more light.
That's so beautiful. And because there are many other narratives going around right now too. And like, I have family members sending me stuff about everybody hates us and you know, whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm done with that. Like, I'm done with like this, like victim mentality. Like, I feel like it creates more of it. I feel like if we're just like, nobody likes me, then like people are going to be like, why does nobody like you? What's wrong with you?
Or
you know what
also,
I mean? Like,
people are like, there's this whole trend right now, me too, unless you're a Jew. And I'm like, also stop, because you are like, you're not helping by doing that, you know?
Yeah.
Like when I read that, I'm like, you're telling me that it's, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. You said it. Yeah. That was the word I was looking for. But,
I think in terms of narrative, it's also important for the audience out there to remember what the Jewish people have been through, and that violence of any sort is not okay and is not going to be accepted by, you know, at least the rest of the, you know, free thinking community that I know of. And that includes, you know, here, Mexico, Italy.
yeah,
Like, you know,
you're right, because these are narratives for a reason.
I don't want, maybe I'm being ignorant and not wanting to see that narrative of, you know, like there being more anti-Semitic thoughts going around in the cultural zeitgeist.
Well, I'm glad that you're not seeing it though, because that means that it's not as pervasive as like is being put in my face. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, because especially because like you're in a lot of communities, like I know you're like really involved in like liberal communities, and like that's like, you know, your crew, which is like, you know, and that's like where it tends to be, you know, that's where we're hearing that this is like, we are hearing that it's coming from both sides.
Into like a narrative that's being written by even like.
No, but the reality is, let's be real also. Lefties are pussies and they're not going to go in arms over anything. honestly, you know, other types of people are the kinds who get, you know, do violent shit. There are more extremist leftist people out there. I understand that, but regularly they're just, you know, like coffee revolutionaries. They'll talk a ton of shit, but not really do much. Maybe they'll go out on the streets and be like, blah, 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 blah. But
yeah, I don't know, because like there are different ways that like that negative energy can be channeled on any front. I think whatever like political alignment you have. So some, I think that
it
like
also
on
depends
the right,
on the definition you have of leftism and rightism. Because for me, the left is more, you know, like, you know,
but I think
coffee intellectuals have enough money to change sexes. So they're not worrying about eating or surviving. Like the people in Mexico who are poor aren't doing that shit. You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm like thinking about leftism. But then there's also Russia, and that's a whole nother thing where I think that they are, you know, a military force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
And it's scary when it's that, but I think they're extremists. Like they're not leftists.
No,
like,
I don't really know.
They're super anti-gay. Like the Russians are not leftist.
Yeah. This is all just like semantics, I feel like, kind of like.
It depends on what the narrative. It depends on what narrative you have.
Right. And these are all of us sharing our narratives. And it's so interesting, like to hear, like, just like what I've been hearing about what's going on in the world as opposed to what you're hearing, because when you get on social media, you get in an echo chamber where everybody is like, because the way that like the algorithm is set up,
you're just getting what you feel and what you think, just
or not even necessarily. Sometimes it's
you
just
can get
like,
radicalized too. I've gotten radicalized over some thoughts that I'm just like, wow, I did not think like this before.
Also, you can get profiled on there, you know.
Yeah, no,
like,
I'm sure the online world knows exactly, like, you know, the database knows who I am to a T, like
also,
to a T.
Once you know that, you can kind of control it. Like I have my targeted ads and I love them. Like it's like targeted ads, a spiritual thing, or like some like health product or some like mom thing, and I'm like, cool, I love that.
But the problem is not the ads, right? The problem, I would say, is the
propaganda.
The recommendations you get, which, you know, like
they come up on me too, for sure. But I just like, it's whatever brings out like an emotional like Well, but that's also why it's like you can't like that's why all the semantics of it. It's like
I can't define myself as a complete leftist or a complete anything.
I don't define myself as anything. And then you have both sides being like, you're bad. And it's also, it's like, okay, that's how I kind of group people. I'm like, the kind of people who group people are like not my vibe. Whether you're left or right or whatever fucking dogma you're following, if you are going to be that closed-minded, even if it's painted as open-minded, it just doesn't resonate for me. Like,
right.
I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to have a conversation about these things. I'll listen to the point of view that maybe isn't like how I feel, and I'll take it and, you know, kind of decide if it's something I want to keep or not.
There's no like media platform or station or channel or anything that I'm like, oh, I don't ever listen to this because those like I'm like, I want to hear what everybody's saying. And really, I feel like I can take it like,
yeah, even from like the Young Turks or like extreme, like not, it's not extreme, but it's pretty left.
I mean, I don't,
because they have such contrasting opinions on so many things.
I don't really
I don't even know
anything
that is.
about
I'm like
them.
World War One. Is that those guys who started World War One? That's how much I know about politics. I'm like, I'm just like, I'm keeping up to date with what's going on in the world now, but I haven't.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because this all happened in that area. And it was like the Young
well,
Turks who assassinated the first guy, right?
Yeah. That's where the channel gets the name, but they're like more, you know, leftist news channel on YouTube. In terms of war is also, they're also narratives, you know? And for example, World War I, II, or the Cold War or the War of Vietnam could be told completely different depending on which story you're listening to. Are you listening to the American side or the Vietnamese side or the German side, or, you know? So that's why, you know, I thought narrative would be a good thing to talk about.
Yeah. So let's bring that home a little bit and like let us know how narrative has affected you in your personal life and in your growth in a more intentional way.
Okay, cool. That's an interesting question.
Sips wine.
We went from such serious subjects, but now I'm going to tone
Should
it
we take
down.
like a collective deep breath here? Like,
No, it's okay, because now we're going to go into schoolgirl territory when we talk about my personal narratives.
I'm gonna be your bubblegum bitch.
Yeah. Okay. So for me personally, it was always about a boy. And it was always me trying to live up to certain book or movie or TV romances that I watched on, you know, that weren't mine. I was just trying to be the protagonist, to be the main girl, and, you know, to get the guy. And so I found myself, you know, buying into these narratives with these guys that may or may not have been the best for me during that time. And so, you know, so it was like, no, it's him because we've known each other since we were children and it's the perfect love story, la la. Or then, you know, both of you know I dated a professor in my time, and that was also a narrative that I was trying and successfully did construct for myself. And then one day I just decided that I wanted to stop telling myself stories and simply live my life. And so, especially love stories, because those really push you, like, you know.
Yeah, because
it can be strong.
Primal. It's primal.
It's primal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, it makes sense. And come on, who doesn't resonate with that? I mean, I was like, yeah, I still will like, I'm so affected by Disney. Like Disney princesses and stuff. Like I will sometimes Oh my gosh, you guys, I can't believe I'm sharing this publicly.
That means it's going to be good.
Sometimes I will walk around like if I'm not feeling motivated to clean, I will start singing to like, I'll pretend that I'm like singing to imaginary like animals that are coming to help me clean my house.
And then things get done quicker magically.
Wow.
It does.
That's cute. That's
It
cute.
does.
That's really sweet, Jojo.
That's a cool way to get it going, though.
That's a
Yeah.
good narrative to tell yourself. Like
Yes.
there's magic in cleaning.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and actually, I think that there is truth in it. And I guess that comes to like narrative too. Like, is it narrative or is it energy work? And is there really a difference? Because
there's
sometimes,
not.
yeah,
There's not a difference.
You're
It's the
tuning
same
to
thing.
a different channel. You're like, this is unmotivating. You're like, I'm going to turn to Snow White. Okay, little animal angels, come guide me to clean. And
yeah,
like,
and
they
it's like
do.
the fairies enter my
Yeah.
realm and they're like, do. Because I will, and sometimes, yeah, I'll like, I feel like I can pray my mess away. Like I do sometimes, you know, where it's just like everything, because maybe it's just a perspective shift because everything looks more overwhelming and messy and scary because my head is crowded and overwhelming and messy.
And then the narrative is I'm getting divine inspiration or divine help.
right.
And dude, if that helps you, like by all means, why would that be bad? Like
How,
I
does
do
that,
shit like that
yeah.
too. Like I don't necessarily pray, but like I speak to my ancestors and like ask them to guide me or to be better, you know, and it's a way of prayer.
I feel like it's like
Yeah.
different synonyms though, like whatever works for you, kind
Yeah.
of. You know, like I don't think that like one religion's right and one's wrong or anything.
No.
I think that like our souls chose to be embodied like in like I'm like my soul chose to be in like this Jewish upbringing, so I like God speaks me through that and also through nature. Like when I pray and I don't feel like connected, I literally will like envision like a big waterfall, or I'll envision like a wind going through trees while I'm praying, so that I don't feel like I'm like being grabbed by like anything that's like not
Right.
God
Well,
That's
or
like-
the
that's
universe
Kabbalah,
or
though.
et cetera, like whatever word you use. Like
yeah. Well, I think that spirituality, just like storytelling, is one of those innate human necessities that help, you know, life go on, you know.
yeah.
But it's something that distinguishes us from animals. So, but I do think that religion is so connected to storytelling because, you know, the Bible is, you know, one of the most famous stories in the whole wide
Right.
world. And
whatever narrative you put behind that story inside yourself is what you're going to get out of it.
absolutely.
Like if you're super unhealed and you're using like the Bible or the Book of Mormon or whatever it be, and you're like projecting that onto other people, you have to believe the way that I believe because I'm healed or whatever. It's like, it's not actually adding to that energy, you know?
I think those like religious stories are meant to help you understand the human experience on a more beautiful level. Most religious texts talk about being good to your neighbor, you know, respect, forgiveness, like really beautiful values. And so, you know, it's also a way of just like maybe teaching, showing people how to best live through stories because it is done through stories. Like the
Yeah.
whole thing is stories.
And before
Yeah.
it was even written, it was told like verbally and passed down. Like all of these stories, like it's literally like since the dawn of humanity.
And all of them do have morals and beliefs and like sort of guidance behind it. And that's where I really wanted to go with in this episode, which is once you become aware of how narrative functions in your life, you can start writing your own narratives instead of just falling into the narratives that, you know, you easily fall into. Like for me, the rom-coms and the How I Met Your Mothers and, you know.
Great show.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it got me into a lot of trouble, but because I
you-
was trying to be the same and do the same.
But
like-
you're over, like, your narrative that goes over all of that is like your story of you and like your growth, and that's what has brought you to this point, right?
Absolutely. No, my story, sort of my arc finishes where I decide to stop telling myself stories and following stories that I've been seeing on fucking TV. Because one thing is to live your story and to find your meaning through more deep things, through the people you love, or, you know, maybe
Wow.
even religion. But another thing is interpreting your whole life through, you know, whatever fucking TV show is in vogue.
Right. Or also
Like, that's
Yeah.
weird, you know. And I'm not the only one. My boyfriend's ex was the same. He's like, she tried to live like Grey's Anatomy. I couldn't stand it. It's
That's
like-
so funny. Yeah, I find that I do that with social media, and I'm realizing
that's
that right
new.
now.
It's because you're Gen Z.
It's well, barely, like by literally 3 months. My husband is
Well, you made the cut.
a millennial and I'm Gen Z. Yeah, I guess so. He's not like on social media as much as me, but I'll see someone who's like, you know, like living the hippie family life and traveling, and I'm like, I am her, you know. But
Yeah.
really, I'm me, and like I'll get the most out of life just in being present and doing what serves me, actually, than trying to like fit into a story that's not my fucking story.
Exactly. Exactly. But a lot of us try to fit into stories that aren't our stories because we think it's the stories that are going to make us happy. Like, it's, if I'm going to get the guy and I'm going to be happy, I'm going to get the job and I'm going to be happy. I'm going to, you know, do all this shit and I'm going to be happy. And in the end, it doesn't make us happy because happiness goes a lot deeper than, you know, the
Yeah.
stories we want to tell ourselves.
So I want to touch back into your story and your personal narrative, and ask, was there a turning point, a specific moment that you realized, like, I'm buying into all these stories and like I'm gonna make a change?
Yeah.
Was
yeah.
it a dramatic, like,
Well, probably. I just I broke up with yet another boyfriend of the many that there were,
right?
and I realized that story was also a narrative that I had told myself, and then by then I was just sick of it. I was like around your age at the time, 28.
I'm
And-
actually 26. I'm almost 27.
Oh my God. Okay, wait. I'm sorry. It's you,
Yeah.
Abby, and then JoJo.
Youngster.
You're
I'm
you're
just
also
kidding.
you're also like spiritually mature for your age. So
Thank you. We're all,
Okay.
age is just a number.
okay.
We're all
so
old souls.
so yeah, I was around 28, Abby's age.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just sick of telling myself these stories and following the stories told to me by movies, books, and TV shows, and not living my own reality. And I figured reality is much more beautiful than a pre-packaged story. And so I just started living reality without having any expectations. So the next time I met a guy, I wasn't thinking, oh my gosh, it's just like the movies. And it's going to be amazing and beautiful and magical and wow. No, I was thinking, he seems nice. Let's get to know him. And that was like a changing point.
Yeah. And do you feel like it was like more magical for the presence?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah. You weren't like pre-writing the story.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh.
I was just living the story and now I have a story to tell,
Yeah.
which happened organically and, you know.
Yeah.
So, I just want to say that, you know, just to like rephrase all the stuff we talked about, storytelling is super important in everybody's lives, and everybody is constantly telling their own stories all the time, whether it's about political stuff going on, the wars in the world, or whether it's about, our own lives and what we hope and wish for ourselves. I feel like it's that once we know how stories are everywhere, we can start to decide which stories are going to be the ones that push us forward.
Yeah. And that said, like, do you have any specific like practices that you do around like storytelling or like writing or something like in your personal growth?
Yeah, I have sort of like a mental exercise that I do when I have conflicts with people. I try to understand my own narrative and how I lived the situation or the problem. And then I try to imagine that I'm the other person and how the other person is seeing me and how they are, like interpreting my actions or my voice or my volume even. And then that helps me to connect with a more empathic view of the other person and make the conflict like smooth over a little bit more because I can understand where they're coming from.
Right.
So I try to do that, but not always and not successfully. Like, honestly, I can get angry. She knows.
As long as you're trying, dude.
But you're a beautifully passionate person. So, yeah. Do you have anything else that you want to share with our listeners? Any advice or like final things you want to leave them with?
Yeah. Listen to LunarLiving every Thursday or Friday. Connect with yourselves and like, these ladies have amazing advice, amazing intel from their hearts and their souls, and they are the most beautiful sisters in the whole wide world. So that's my closing statement.
Thank you. You're one of them.
Thank you. Yes, you're amazing. We're so grateful to have you here.
Thank you guys for having me.
We love you.
Love you guys too so much.
And we love you.
Love you guys. Cheers. L'chaim.
L'chaim. Bottoms up.